Her true story from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. For 3 years, my son brought me chamomile tea every single night at 8 p.m. His voice was so gentle, so caring, but something in my gut told me to be afraid. Betrayal can come disguised as a cup of chamomile tea, served with a loving smile. That night I couldn't take it anymore and gave that tea to his wife instead. God forgive me, I watched the truth destroy everything. My son's face crumpled when he realized what I'd done. All that fake tenderness just fell away, and I saw who he really was underneath. He ran that same night and disappeared completely. It took them years to finally catch him. Welcome back to Granny Dorothy's Stories. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. Your support truly encourages me to continue sharing these incredible tales with you. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love hearing from my sweethearts around the world. Like and share if you believe justice has no expiration date. My name is Chris Thompson. I'm 72 years old, living in a quiet suburb outside Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. For 30 years I worked as a marriage counselor, helping hundreds of families navigate their darkest moments. I thought I'd seen every form of deception, every hidden agenda, every type of manipulation a human being could inflict on another. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for discovering that my own son, Harold, had been slowly poisoning me for his inheritance. An inheritance that would never be his, because today, it all belongs to my grandchildren. Cold silence filled the room that October night when everything changed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began, because every detail matters when you're trying to understand how a mother could miss such deadly signs from her own child. 3 years ago, Harold showed up at my doorstep with his wife Sharon and their 2 children. He looked exhausted, defeated even. His construction business had collapsed, he said. Bad investments, worse timing. Could they stay with me for a few months while he got back on his feet? Course I said yes. What mother wouldn't? This house had felt so empty since my husband passed 5 years earlier. Having my grandchildren's laughter filling these rooms again felt like a blessing. The first few weeks were wonderful. Harold was attentive, helpful around the house, fixing things that had been broken for months. Sharon kept the place spotless, cooked elaborate meals, and the children, 8-year-old Emma and 6-year-old Tyler, brought joy I hadn't felt in years. We were a family again, united under one roof. Then came the tea ritual. It started innocently enough. Harold noticed I'd been having trouble sleeping. The grief, the empty bed, the silence at night. Insomnia had become my unwanted companion. One evening, exactly at 8 p.m., Harold knocked on my bedroom door carrying a delicate china cup, steam rising from amber liquid inside. "Special chamomile blend, Mom," he said, that charming smile spreading across his face. "I got it from this holistic shop downtown. The lady there said it's perfect for seniors with sleep issues. All natural, completely safe." The tea tasted slightly bitter, but Harold assured me that was normal. "The healing herbs," he said. He sat on the edge of my bed while I drank, asking about my day, sharing stories about the kids, making plans for house improvements. Felt so caring, so thoughtful. My heart pounded like a drum in the quiet kitchen whenever I heard him preparing it. But back then, it was from gratitude, not fear. Every single night, 8 p.m. sharp, Harold would appear with that tea. If I was watching television, he'd pause my show. If I was reading, he'd bookmark my page. If I was on the phone, he'd wait patiently until I hung up. "Consistency is key for natural remedies," he'd explain. "You need to take it at the exact same time for it to work properly." Her hands trembled on the teacup. That's what I started noticing about Sharon after the first month. Whenever Harold prepared my tea, she'd find reasons to leave the kitchen. Needed to check on the children. Forgot something upstairs. Had to make a phone call. At first, I thought she was giving us mother-son bonding time. How naive I was. The children's behavior changed too. Emma and Tyler, who used to bounce into my room for bedtime stories, started avoiding my bedroom after tea time. "Grandma needs her rest," Harold would tell them, ushering them away. But I caught Emma once, standing in my doorway, staring at me with worried eyes as I sipped that nightly cup. When I smiled and waved her in, Harold appeared immediately, scooping her up, whispering something that made her nod solemnly. I realized the tea wasn't the only thing bitter in this house when my symptoms started. First, it was small things. Forgetting where I put my reading glasses. Missing appointments I was certain I'd remembered. Feeling dizzy when I stood up too quickly. Harold was so concerned, so helpful. He started managing my medications, organizing them in those daily pill containers. He offered to handle my banking since I was getting confused with the online systems. A chill ran through my veins the day I found a bank statement I didn't remember. $3,000 transferred to Harold's account. When I asked him about it, he looked at me with such pity. "Mom, don't you remember? You said you wanted to help with Emma's dental work. We discussed it for an hour last Tuesday." He pulled out his phone, showed me a note he'd made about our conversation. Detailed, specific, completely fabricated, though I couldn't prove it. The air grew heavy with secrets as more incidents piled up. Legal documents appeared on my desk, power of attorney forms with my shaky signature that I couldn't recall signing. My will, which I'd kept in a safety deposit box, was suddenly in Harold's possession, with updates I didn't remember authorizing. When I confronted him, he'd get that concerned look, suggesting maybe I should see a doctor about my memory issues. But here's the thing about being a marriage counselor for 30 years. You develop instincts about when someone's lying. The micro-expressions, the deflection tactics, the gaslighting techniques. Harold was good, but I was better. I started pretending to be more confused than I was, letting him think his plan was working while I quietly investigated. The plant experiment was Sharon's idea, though she didn't tell me directly. She left a gardening magazine open on the kitchen counter, circled an article about plants that detect toxins in water. Subtle. Smart. That night, instead of finishing my tea, I waited until Harold left and poured half into my Boston fern. Within 3 days, the fern was dead. My heart pounded like a drum in the quiet kitchen when I realized what this meant. My own son, the boy I'd raised, nursed through chickenpox, cheered at every baseball game, put through college, was poisoning me. But why? The answer came when I started digging through his things while he was at his job interviews. Gambling debts. Hundreds of thousands of dollars owed to people whose collection methods didn't involve courtrooms. Forged life insurance policies with my name, recently increased to $2 million. Email exchanges with someone about timeline expectations and natural-looking decline. And most horrifying, searches on his laptop about inheritance law, untraceable poisons, and how long before dementia diagnosis allows power of attorney. Every word felt like a knife in my chest as I photographed each piece of evidence with my phone. But the worst discovery was yet to come. Harold's first wife, not Sharon, but Patricia, who died 5 years ago. Her death certificate listed complications from early-onset dementia. She was 43. The symptoms described in her medical records were identical to what I was experiencing. He'd done this before. He'd perfected his method on Patricia, and now I was next. Silence became my greatest weapon as I continued the charade. I let Harold believe I was declining. I signed documents with intentional errors that would make them legally invalid. I recorded our conversations on my phone hidden in my knitting basket. And I waited for the right moment to expose this dark family secret. Sharon became my unexpected ally. One evening while Harold was out, she slipped into my room. Her smile hid a storm of rage as she whispered, "I know what he's doing to you." I tried to warn Patricia, but she didn't believe me. "I can't let him do it again." She revealed Harold's threats. If she interfered, he'd take the children and disappear. He had connections, he said. People who owed him favors. She'd never see Emma and Tyler again. We developed a system. The blue scarf meant he'd increased the dose. Red meant he was preparing legal documents. Yellow meant she'd overheard him on the phone with his creditors, buying more time, promising payment soon. We were conspirators in my own home, united against a man who wore the mask of a loving son while harboring the heart of a killer. The truth spilled out, as dark as the tea he brewed, when Sharon revealed the full scope of Harold's greed and lies. 3 other elderly victims in neighboring counties. All single, all wealthy, all dead within a year of Harold becoming their financial advisor or caring relative. The police had never connected the deaths, natural causes, they said. Just unfortunate coincidences. But I wasn't going to be another coincidence. He never saw the storm I was about to unleash. I started visiting my doctor secretly, documenting the toxins in my system. I consulted with a lawyer about protecting my assets. I reached out to a private investigator who specialized in elder abuse cases. All while maintaining the facade of a declining, confused old woman who could barely remember her own name. But here's where my story takes a turn you won't expect. 2 weeks before that fateful October night, I changed my will completely. Everything, the house, the life insurance, my savings, my husband's pension. All of it would go into a trust for Emma and Tyler. Harold wouldn't see a penny. Sharon would be the trustee until the children turned 25. I made sure Harold's gambling creditors would never touch my grandchildren's future. The shocking twist was how easy Harold made it for me. His arrogance, his certainty that his plan was foolproof, made him sloppy. He started talking about my inevitable move to a nursing home in front of me, as if I wasn't there. He brought power of attorney papers to dinner, discussing them with Sharon while I sat right there, pretending to be lost in confusion. The inheritance battle he was planning wouldn't happen the way he imagined. When he discovered that night in October that I knew everything, when he realized his poison tea was about to be tested by police, he did something I never expected. He ran. My son, the greedy son who'd killed before and tried to kill again, grabbed whatever cash he could find and disappeared into the night. The police arrived 20 minutes after he fled. They found his laptop still open. His searches about poison still on the screen. They found the tea tin with enough toxins to kill 3 people. They found everything except Harold. That was 2 years ago. The FBI added him to their wanted list 6 months later when they connected him to 5 elderly deaths across 3 states. My son, my flesh and blood, is now a fugitive from justice, running from the inheritance he killed for but will never touch. Every penny of it sits in trust for Emma and Tyler, protected by ironclad legal documents he can never contest because he'd have to come out of hiding to do it. The deadly secret he thought would make him rich instead made him a man without a country, without a family, without a future. Sharon divorced him in absentia. The children know their father is gone and why. We told them age-appropriate truth because lies poison families just as surely as toxic tea. Some nights, I wonder where Harold is. Does he think about the mother he tried to murder? Does he know that his children are millionaires while he hides in shadows? Does he realize that his greed and lies cost him everything while giving his victims justice and his children a future? Can you imagine discovering your own child is not just a would-be killer but now a fugitive? His face on wanted posters. His name whispered in true crime podcasts. This family drama became a federal case. This shocking revelation became a cautionary tale told in elder care facilities across Pennsylvania. Before I ask you to subscribe to hear more about how we've rebuilt our lives and what happens when the FBI occasionally gets a lead on Harold's whereabouts, let me ask you this. What would you do if you discovered someone you loved was capable of such evil? Would you protect them or turn them in? Leave your answer in the comments below, because even now, knowing everything Harold did, part of me still mourns the son I thought I had. The inheritance meant for a killer now funds his children's education, their therapy, their chance at a normal life. Emma wants to be a doctor. Tyler loves building things, just like his father once did before greed poisoned his soul. They carry their father's DNA but not his darkness, and that gives me hope. Sharon and I raised them together in this house that almost became my tomb. We drink tea every evening. Different tea, safe tea, laughing tea. Sometimes Sharon's hands still tremble on the teacup, remembering. But we're survivors, all of us, even the children who lost their father to his own evil choices. The FBI agent assigned to Harold's case calls occasionally. There was a sighting in Mexico last year. Another in Canada 6 months ago. He's out there somewhere, my son the fugitive, running from the law and from the ghost of the mother he tried to kill. But I'm not a ghost. I'm alive, I'm thriving, and I made sure my grandchildren's inheritance is protected by more lawyers than Harold could ever afford to fight. This shocking confession, this true story of family betrayal, doesn't have a neat ending because Harold is still out there. But it has a just ending. The victims have peace, the children have futures, and the would-be killer has nothing but the knowledge that his mother survived. His plan failed, and his children will grow up knowing exactly what kind of man their father really was. He never saw the storm I was about to unleash, and now he lives in its eye, spinning in darkness of his own making, while we've found sunshine on the other side. Please subscribe if you want to hear what happens when a mother must choose between justice and blood, between protecting society and protecting her son. Because even now, with Harold on the run and my grandchildren safe, this story isn't over. It won't be over until he's caught or until I take my last breath, whichever comes first. But this time, that last breath won't come from poisoned tea. It'll come naturally, peacefully, surrounded by the grandchildren who got the inheritance their father tried to kill for. The morning I found those life insurance documents in the trash changed everything. My hands were shaking as I smoothed out the crumpled papers, reading my own death warrant disguised as financial planning. $2 million. The beneficiary changed from, to be divided equally among the surviving family, to Harold Thompson, sole beneficiary. The date of the change. 3 weeks after he'd started bringing me tea. Let me tell you what it feels like to realize your own child sees you as nothing more than a payday. The air grew heavy with secrets in my own home, and every familiar corner suddenly felt like a trap. But I couldn't let Harold know that I was onto him. 30 years as a marriage counselor has taught me that the most dangerous moment in any abusive relationship is when the victim reveals they know the truth. And make no mistake, this was abuse, just wrapped in filial concern and served in a china teacup. I started my performance the next morning. When Harold came down for breakfast, I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring blankly at my coffee mug. "Mom," he said, and I could hear the hope in his voice. "Mom, are you okay?" "Harold," I replied, making my voice quaver. "When did you get here?" I thought you were at college." I watched his eyes light up. My confusion was progressing. His plan was working. The greedy son could barely contain his satisfaction. Sharon was washing dishes, but I saw her shoulders tense. She knew I was sharper than that. When Harold left for his supposed job interview, she turned to me, and I saw tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. But I just smiled vaguely, maintaining my act even with her. I couldn't risk her accidentally revealing that I was still lucid. That afternoon, while everyone was out, I began my investigation in earnest. Harold's room was first. What I found there made my blood run cold. Gambling debts. Not just the few thousand I might have helped with, but hundreds of thousands. Emails from people with names like Tommy the Hammer and Big Eddie. These weren't the kind of creditors who accepted payment plans. They wanted their money, and they wanted it now. But it was the notebook that truly revealed the depth of Harold's betrayal and revenge. He'd been planning this for over a year. There were notes about optimal dosage, expected timeline, and avoiding autopsy triggers. He'd researched which states had the least stringent death investigation procedures. Pennsylvania apparently was perfect. Unless there were obvious signs of foul play, deaths of elderly people were rarely investigated thoroughly. The most chilling entry was a practice log. Patricia's name was at the top. Harold's first wife. I remembered her death. So sudden, so tragic. Early onset dementia at 43, they said. She declined rapidly over 6 months, then passed away peacefully in her sleep. Harold had been devastated, or so it seemed. Now I know better. She'd been his test run. Every word felt like a knife in my chest as I photographed page after page with my phone. But I needed more than just his notes. I needed proof of what was in that tea. The next 3 weeks were the hardest of my life. Each night at 8 p.m., Harold would arrive with my poison tea. His voice dripped with honey, but I could taste the poison beneath, literally. I'd take small sips, enough to maintain my symptoms, then wait for him to leave before pouring the rest into a sealed container I kept hidden in my closet. By the end of the month, I had 21 samples of Harold's special brew. My secret doctor's visits were terrifying. Dr. Martinez, whom I'd known for 15 years, ran my blood work off the books. "Chris," she said, her face grave, "you have significant levels of benzodiazepine in your system. But there's something else. A compound I can't identify. It's organic, possibly plant-based. Have you been taking any new medications or supplements?" "Just tea," I told her. "Chamomile tea my son makes for me." She looked at me for a long moment. "Bring me a sample," she said quietly. "And Chris, be careful." The lab results came back 2 weeks later. The tea contained a cocktail of sedatives and a rare plant toxin that mimicked dementia symptoms. In small doses, it caused confusion and memory problems. In larger doses, over time, it would cause organ failure that looked like natural aging decline. It was brilliant in its evil, virtually undetectable unless someone was specifically looking for it. Meanwhile, my performance at home continued. I forgot the names of my grandchildren. I called Harold by his father's name. I left the stove on twice, both times when I knew Sharon would catch it quickly. Harold was getting bolder, talking about my declining capacity on phone calls I could overhear, visiting nursing homes, just to look at options for when the time comes. But Sharon was reaching her breaking point. One afternoon, she cornered me in the bathroom while Harold was in the garage. Her smile hid a storm of rage as she grabbed my hands. "I know you're pretending," she hissed. "I know you know. We have to stop him." "How?" I whispered back. "If we go to the police now, it's our word against his. He'll run, and he'll take you and the children with him. Then what do we do?" That's when I told her about the evidence I'd been collecting. Tea samples, the blood work, the photographs of his notes, the recorded conversations on my phone. Sharon's eyes widened with each revelation. "There's more," she said, her voice barely audible. "Harold doesn't know I know this, but I found out about the others. There was a man in New Jersey, Mr. Chen. A widow in Delaware, Mrs. Patterson. Both elderly, both wealthy. Both died of sudden dementia-like symptoms after Harold became close to them. He volunteered at their senior centers, Chris. He hunted them. The truth spilled out, as dark as the tea he brewed. My son wasn't just a killer. He was a serial killer, preying on the elderly, perfecting his method with each victim. And I was meant to be his masterpiece. The biggest payout yet. Sharon and I developed our code system that day. The scarves were her idea. Simple, visible, impossible for Harold to decode. Blue for increased dose, red for legal documents, yellow for creditor pressure. We were two women united against a monster who happened to share my DNA. The increased doses started the following week. My tea became more bitter, and the effects stronger. One night, I genuinely couldn't remember where I was for almost an hour after drinking it. Harold sat by my bed, holding my hand, telling me everything would be okay, that he'd take care of everything. The loving son act was so convincing that if I hadn't known the truth, I might have wept with gratitude. A chill ran through my veins when Harold brought a lawyer to the house. Mr. Davidson specialized in elder law, Harold explained, and would help ensure my wishes were properly documented. The man sat across from me with kind eyes and a gentle voice, asking if I understood what power of attorney meant, if I wanted Harold to manage my affairs when I became unable. "Of course," I said, my voice frail. "Harold is such a good son. I trust him completely." Then I signed the documents with my left hand, adding flourishes that weren't part of my legal signature. The lawyer didn't notice, but the documents would be invalid if ever challenged in court. Harold's mask was slipping more each day. He stopped pretending to look for jobs. He spent his days on his laptop, researching investment properties and luxury cars. Once, I caught him looking at a house in Florida, A mansion worth $3 million. Planning a vacation? I asked innocently. He slammed the laptop shut and helped me to my chair, reminding me it was almost time for my tea. The children knew something was wrong. Emma, sweet, observant Emma, started leaving drawings under my door. Pictures of our family, but Harold was always drawn apart from the rest, sometimes with dark scribbles around him. Tyler began having nightmares, crying out in his sleep about the bad tea and Grandma going away. One evening Harold made a mistake. He was on the phone with someone speaking in low, urgent tones. He didn't know I was in the hallway, didn't know I could hear every word. 6 months maximum, he was saying. The decline is accelerating. Once she's declared incompetent, I'll have full control. The house will be on the market within a week of the funeral. Yes, I know what I owe you. You'll get your money. I stood frozen, my hand over my mouth to stifle any sound. 6 months. He'd given me 6 months to live. That night, when Harold brought my tea, I looked him straight in the eye. You're such a good son, I said, my voice stronger than it had been in weeks. Taking such good care of me. For just a moment, I saw something flicker across his face. Guilt, fear, recognition that I knew. But then he smiled, that charming smile that had fooled so many. Anything for you, Mom. Now drink up. All of it. Silence became my greatest weapon, but that silence was about to break. The next morning, while Harold was in the shower, I called my lawyer. My real lawyer, not Harold's puppet. I made an appointment for the following day, telling him it was urgent, that it involved criminal activity and needed to be handled with extreme discretion. But Harold must have sensed something shifting. That evening, Sharon wore all 3 scarves twisted together. When Harold brought my tea, his hands were shaking slightly. I've been thinking, Mom, he said. Maybe it's time we looked at those nursing homes more seriously. You seem to be declining faster than expected. Whatever you think is best, dear, I replied, taking the cup. But this time I only pretended to sip. I'd become an expert at the fake swallow, the satisfied sigh, the drowsy eyes. Harold watched me like a hawk until he thought I was asleep. That's when I heard him on the phone again. I need to accelerate things. Can you get me something stronger? Something that won't show up in a standard toxicology screening. Money is no object. I'll have plenty soon. He never saw the storm I was about to unleash. The next day's lawyer appointment would change everything. The trust one set up for Emma and Tyler was ironclad. The new will I signed, with my right hand, my legal signature, in front of 3 witnesses and a notary, left Harold nothing. Not a penny. Not a memory. Nothing. But I knew that wouldn't be enough to stop him. A man who'd killed at least 4 people wouldn't simply accept being disinherited. He'd contest the will, claim I was incompetent when I signed it, drag my grandchildren through years of legal battles. No, I needed him gone. Either in prison or on the run. Sharon knew it too. That night, she made a decision that changed everything. She called her sister in California, speaking in code, arranging a safe place for her and the children if things went wrong. She packed emergency bags, hiding them in the garage behind old Christmas decorations. She was preparing for war. The dark family secret was about to explode into the light. But none of us could have predicted how Harold would react when cornered, when his carefully constructed plan fell apart in front of his eyes. The man who'd played the loving son for 3 years was about to show his true face, and it was more terrifying than any of us imagined. My heart pounded like a drum in the quiet kitchen the night before everything changed. I sat at the table where I'd raised my children, where Harold had done his homework, where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays. How had that sweet boy become this monster? Was it something I did? Something I missed? Or was he always this way, wearing a mask even as a child? The investigation I'd started had revealed more than just Harold's crimes. It revealed a pattern going back years. College roommates who'd suffered mysterious illnesses. A girlfriend who'd had a near-fatal allergic reaction to something she'd never been allergic to before. An elderly neighbor who'd changed her will to include Harold just weeks before her sudden death. The signs had always been there. I just hadn't wanted to see them. But now I saw everything clearly. Every cup of tea was an attempted murder. Every concerned look was calculated manipulation. Every, "I love you, Mom," was a lie designed to keep me compliant while he slowly stole my life. My life. The next segment of this story will reveal the night everything came crashing down. The night I offered that poison tea to Sharon and watched my son transform from predator to prey. But before I continue, I need to ask you something. Have you ever had that gut feeling that someone close to you wasn't who they seemed? That instinct that something was wrong even when everything looked right? Trust that feeling. It might save your life. If you're finding this story valuable, please subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my position? Would you have confronted Harold directly, or played the long game like I did? October 15th. I'll never forget that date. It was a Thursday, unseasonably warm for Pennsylvania autumn. The leaves outside were brilliant gold and red, but inside my house, everything was about to turn dark as midnight. The day started normally. Harold brought me breakfast in bed, scrambled eggs and toast, with a glass of orange juice that probably contained God knows what. I ate half, claiming no appetite, while he sat on my bed discussing his plans for my money. He didn't even pretend anymore that it wasn't already his in his mind. "I found an excellent facility, Mom," he said, showing me glossy brochures. Sunrise Manor. They specialize in memory care. The staff is wonderful, and they have an opening next month. "That's nice, dear," I mumbled, letting my eyes go unfocused. Inside I was calculating. Next month. He planned to have me institutionalized within 30 days. Sharon was different that morning. There was a resolution in her eyes I hadn't seen before. When she brought the children to say goodbye before school, she hugged them longer than usual. Emma looked up at her mother with those wise 8-year-old eyes and said, "It's going to be okay, Mommy. Grandma says everything's going to be okay." I hadn't said any such thing to Emma, but children know more than we give them credit for. That afternoon, while Harold was at the bank, probably securing loans against his expected inheritance, Sharon and I had our final planning session. We sat in my bedroom, speaking in whispers. The television turned up loud to mask our conversation. "Tonight," Sharon said. "It has to be tonight. He's planning something. I heard him on the phone this morning arranging for a doctor to come tomorrow. Some specialist in geriatric psychiatry who's willing to declare you incompetent for the right price." He nodded. We'd run out of time. "Are you ready?" I asked her. "I've been ready since the day I found out he killed Patricia," she replied, and for the first time, I saw the steel beneath her fearful exterior. "My children will not grow up with a murderer for a father." The plan was simple. I would offer Sharon the tea. Harold would panic, reveal himself. Sharon had already called 911, telling them she suspected elder abuse and to be on standby. They were parked 2 blocks away, waiting for her signal. But you know what they say about the best-laid plans. 8 p.m. arrived with its usual precision. Harold appeared in my doorway with the china cup, steam rising from the amber liquid like toxic smoke. But something was different. He wasn't alone. Behind him stood a man I'd never seen before. Tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes like a shark. "Mom, this is Mr. Volkov," Harold said smoothly. "He's a business associate. He's going to be staying with us for a few days." Mr. Volkov nodded at me, and I understood immediately. This was one of Harold's creditors. The kind who broke kneecaps first and asked questions later. Harold had brought a mobster into my home, around my grandchildren. My heart pounded like a drum in the quiet kitchen as I took the tea with trembling hands. And this time the trembling was real. Sharon appeared in the doorway, wearing all 3 scarves, her face pale. She saw Volkov and understood the danger immediately. "You look tired, Sharon," I said, my voice steady despite my fear. "Why don't you sit down? Have some tea." Harold made plenty. I held out the cup to her. What happened next seemed to occur in slow motion. Harold's face went from confused to horrified to enraged in the span of a heartbeat. "No!" he screamed, lunging forward. "That's Mom's special blend. She needs her exact prescription." The cup flew from my hands, shattering against the wall, tea spreading like blood across my grandmother's wallpaper. Volkov stepped back, his hand moving to his jacket. God knows what he had hidden there. "Prescription," I said, my voice suddenly clear and strong. "I thought it was just chamomile tea, Harold. Why can't Sharon have some?" The mask didn't just slip. It shattered completely. Harold's handsome face contorted into something demonic. "You know," he hissed. "You've known all along." "I know everything," I replied, standing up straight, dropping my confused elderly act entirely. "The poison. Patricia. Mr. Chin. Mrs. Patterson. The others. I know about all of them." Volkov's eyes narrowed. "What is this about, Harold? You told me your mother was senile." "She is," Harold insisted desperately. "She's confused. She doesn't know what she's saying." I pulled out my phone, showing the recording app that had been running since Volkov walked in. "I have recordings, Harold. Months of them. I have the tea samples. Lab results showing the poison. Your notebook with all your murder plans. The police have copies of everything." That's when Harold made his fatal mistake. He grabbed me, his hands around my throat, screaming, "You ruined everything. You were supposed to die. Just like Patricia. Just like all the others." Volkov pulled Harold off me, not out of concern for my safety, but because he finally understood he'd been financing a serial killer. "You told me this was a simple inheritance situation," he growled at Harold. "You said the old lady was already dying." Sharon had pressed the panic button on her phone. We could hear sirens in the distance, getting closer. Harold heard them too. His eyes went wild, darting between me, Sharon, and Volkov. "I need that money," he screamed. "I owe 300,000. They'll kill me." "Looks like you should have thought of that before you started poisoning mothers," Volkov said coldly, stepping away from Harold. "This is your mess now." The sirens were getting closer. Harold looked at me one last time, and what I saw in his eyes wasn't my son. It was a cornered animal, desperate and dangerous. "This isn't over," he snarled. Then he ran. He shoved past Sharon, knocked over Volkov, and bolted down the stairs. We heard the back door slam. His car engine roared to life, tires squealing as he fled into the night. The police arrived 3 minutes later. 3 minutes too late. Cold silence filled the room as we all stood there, processing what had just happened. Volkov, surprisingly, stayed to talk to the police. He had no love for Harold anymore. Bad for business to be associated with a murderer. He told them everything about Harold's debts, his connections, his desperation. The detective who interviewed me was kind but thorough. I showed him everything. The tea samples, the recordings, the photographs of Harold's notebook. Dr. Martinez had sent over my blood work showing the poisoning. Sharon provided her testimony about Patricia's death and Harold's threats. "Why didn't you come to us sooner?" the detective asked. "Because he's my son," I said simply. And I needed enough evidence to guarantee he'd be stopped. One elderly woman claiming her son was poisoning her. Without proof. Would you have believed me? He didn't answer, which was answer enough. The CSI team found Harold's tea-making supplies in the basement, a virtual poison laboratory. The special blend he'd been giving me was a masterpiece of murder, designed to kill slowly, naturally, undetectably. They found enough poison to kill a dozen people. But they didn't find Harold. The next hours were a blur. Emma and Tyler were sent to stay with Sharon's sister. The house became a crime scene. The media got wind of the story. Elderly woman discovers son's murder plot, made for sensational headlines. But through it all, one fact remained. Harold was gone. The FBI got involved when they connected Harold to the other deaths. 5 states, 7 victims confirmed, possibly more. My son had been hunting and killing elderly people for nearly a decade. The inheritance money never lasted long. Gambling debts, bad investments, living beyond his means. So he'd find another victim, another lonely elderly person to befriend, another cup of poisoned tea to serve with a smile. But I was different. I was his mother. He'd lived in my house, brought his family into my life, looked me in the eye every day for 3 years while slowly poisoning me. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that even the hardened FBI agents seemed shaken. The search for Harold intensified when they found his car abandoned at a truck stop near the Maryland border. He'd planned this escape route, probably had it ready for months. Cash hidden somewhere, fake IDs, contacts who would help him disappear. My son, the boy I'd raised, had become a ghost. Sharon and the children moved back in with me after the crime scene tape came down. We needed each other. The children needed stability after their world imploded. Sharon needed support as she divorced a fugitive and testified before grand juries. And I needed them, my real family, the ones who stood by me when the truth came out. The tea ritual continues, but it's different now. Every evening at 8 p.m., Sharon and I have tea together. Real tea, safe tea, healing tea. Sometimes Emma joins us with her hot chocolate. Tyler prefers milk and cookies. We sit together, a family forged in survival. And we don't talk about Harold. But I think about him. Every day I think about my fugitive son. Where is he? Mexico. Canada. Hidden in some small town in America. Planning his next move? Does he think about what he's done? Does he feel remorse, or just anger that his plan failed? The FBI agent assigned to the case, Agent Chen, ironically sharing the name of one of Harold's victims, calls me monthly with updates. There was a credible sighting in Texas 6 months ago. Someone using one of Harold's known aliases tried to get a job at a nursing home in Oregon. Each time, he vanishes before they can close in. We'll catch him, Agent Chen assures me. Men like Harold always make mistakes. Their greed trips them up. But it's been 2 years now. 2 years of looking over my shoulder. 2 years of wondering if he'll come back for revenge or for the money he'll never inherit. 2 years of explaining to Emma and Tyler why Daddy can't come home. The inheritance Harold killed for now sits in an ironclad trust for his children. $4 million they'll receive when they turn 25, protected by so many legal safeguards that Harold could never touch it even if he weren't a fugitive. It's my final victory over his greed. His children will have everything he wanted, and he'll have nothing. Some nights, when insomnia keeps me awake, real insomnia now, not poison-induced, I stand at my bedroom window and wonder if he's out there watching. The boy who brought me tea with a smile while planning my funeral. The son who calculated my worth in dollars while I calculated his worth in love. Every word felt like a knife in my chest when I had to tell Emma and Tyler an age-appropriate version of why their father was gone. Daddy did some very bad things, I told them. He hurt people, including Grandma. And when people do bad things, they have to face consequences. Will he come back? Tyler asked, his 6-year-old voice small and frightened. No, sweetheart, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure. He can't come back. But that's not entirely true, is it? He could come back. Any day, Harold could decide the risk is worth it. Maybe for revenge. Maybe for money. Maybe just to finish what he started. That's why Sharon and I have security cameras now. That's why we have an alarm system. That's why Agent Chen's number is on the speed dial. The truth spilled out, as dark as the tea he brewed, in the months following his escape. More victims were discovered. Elderly people in nursing homes where Harold had volunteered. Wealthy widows he'd befriended at grief support groups. Each one had died of natural causes after Harold entered their lives. The full count may never be known. My story became a cautionary tale told at senior centers and elder care facilities. Watch for the warning signs, they say. Even family members can be predators. They use my picture, my story, my survival as a teaching tool. Chris Thompson, the woman who outsmarted her serial killer son. But I don't feel smart. Feel lucky. Lucky that Sharon was brave enough to warn me. Lucky that I had the professional background to recognize manipulation. Lucky that Harold's greed made him impatient. Another few months, and I would have been another statistic. Another elderly person dead of natural causes. Do you know what the hardest part is? It's not the betrayal, though that cuts deep. It's not the fear, though that lingers. It's the guilt. The guilt of wondering what I did wrong as a mother. What signs did I miss when Harold was young? Could I have prevented this if I'd been more attentive, more strict, more something? Agent Chen tells me this isn't my fault, that some people are just born wrong. But how can a mother not wonder? How can I not replay every moment of Harold's childhood, looking for the seed of the monster he became? Sharon tells me I saved her and the children. She says that if Harold had succeeded in killing me, he would have eventually turned on them too. Men who can kill their mothers can kill anyone, she says, and she's probably right. But that doesn't make the guilt disappear. He never saw the storm I was about to unleash, but I never saw the storm he was brewing either. We were both playing chess, but I didn't know I was on the board until almost too late. The shocking twist of my story isn't just that my son tried to kill me. It's that he's still out there somewhere, possibly reading these very words. Harold, if you're watching this, know this. The FBI will never stop looking. Your children are safe from you. And the inheritance you killed for will never be yours. To everyone else watching, please learn from my story. The signs of elder abuse, financial exploitation, and slow poisoning are often subtle. That caring relative who insists on managing medications. The helpful child who takes over finances. The devoted caregiver who isolates their elderly charge from others. These can be red flags. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't let family bonds blind you to danger. Love shouldn't come with a price tag, and care shouldn't come with conditions. Before I continue with what happened after Harold fled, I need to ask. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right? How did you handle it? Leave your answer in the comments, because even now, 2 years later, I struggle with my choice every day. Subscribe if you want to hear how we've rebuilt our lives in Harold's absence, and what happens when the hunters become the hunted. Because Harold may be a fugitive, but he's also a survivor, and survivors have a way of resurfacing when you least expect them. The first year after Harold fled was the hardest. Not because of the police investigations or the media attention or even the fear that he might return. It was hard because I had to learn how to live without the son I thought I had while mourning the son who never really existed. The FBI took over my dining room for 3 weeks, setting up what they called a command center to coordinate the manhunt. Agent Chen became a regular presence in our lives. A strange guardian angel in a dark suit who drank coffee like water and had eyes that never stopped scanning for danger. Your son is smart, she told me one afternoon, reviewing Harold's financial records. He'd been planning an escape route for years. Hidden bank accounts, fake identities, safe houses. This wasn't impulse. He always knew this day might come. The hidden bank accounts were the most shocking revelation. Using his victims' money, Harold had squirreled away nearly $500,000 in offshore accounts under false names. The FBI froze what they could find, but Harold had already emptied several accounts in the hours after he fled. He had enough money to disappear for a long time. Sharon's divorce proceedings were surreal. How do you divorce someone who's on the FBI's most wanted list? The lawyer had never handled a case like it. The judge fast-tracked the proceedings, granting Sharon full custody and all marital assets. Not that there were many left after Harold's debts were tallied. The creditors came calling, of course. Volkov was actually the most reasonable, surprisingly. He wrote off Harold's debt and disappeared, wanting no part of the federal investigation. But others weren't so understanding. They tried to claim Harold's debt should pass to me, to Sharon, to anyone they could bill. It took a team of lawyers to fight them off. But the real battle was in my own home, with 2 traumatized children trying to understand why their father was suddenly a monster on the news. Emma, always too perceptive for her age, asked me directly one day, "Grandma, did Daddy really try to kill you?" How do you answer that? How do you tell an 8-year-old that yes, Her father tried to murder her grandmother for money. I couldn't lie to her. She'd already heard too much, seen too much. But I could frame it in a way she could process. Your daddy is sick, sweetheart, I told her. Not sick in his body, but sick in his mind. He made very bad choices that hurt people, including me. But that's not your fault, and it doesn't mean you're sick too. You're perfect just as you are. Tyler's response was different. He stopped talking for 3 months. Just completely shut down. Sharon and I took him to therapist after therapist, but he wouldn't speak to anyone. Then one day, while we were having our evening tea, he suddenly said, I don't want to be like Daddy. You won't be, Sharon said firmly, pulling him into her arms. You're already kinder than he ever was. The house felt different without Harold's menacing presence. Lighter, yes, but also empty in strange ways. His room became a storage space, then Sharon's art studio. She'd started painting as therapy, dark canvases that gradually became brighter as months passed. The basement where he'd mixed his poisons was professionally cleaned and turned into a playroom for the children. We reclaimed every space he'd contaminated. But some contaminations run deeper than physical space. I returned to counseling, but as a patient this time. Dr. Rosen specialized in trauma from family violence. You're experiencing complicated grief, she explained. You're mourning 2 losses, the son you thought you had and the son you actually had. Plus, you're processing the trauma of attempted murder by someone you loved. It's one of the most complex psychological injuries a person can experience. She was right. Some days I'd forget Harold was a monster and find myself wanting to call him to hear his voice. Then I'd remember the tea, the poison, the calculated way he'd watched me deteriorate, and the rage would come flooding back. Love and hate twisted together like the scarves Sharon used to wear as warnings. 6 months after Harold fled, the first real lead came in. Someone matching his description had been working at a nursing home in Arizona under an assumed name. By the time the FBI arrived, he was gone, but the pattern was chilling. He'd already befriended 2 wealthy residents. Both had recently changed their wills to include their caring young friend. He can't help himself, Agent Chen explained. It's not just about money anymore. It's who he is. He's a predator, and predators hunt. The near miss in Arizona led to a media blitz. Harold's face was everywhere. America's Most Wanted, CNN, even international news programs. Tips poured in from across the country. Harold was seen in Vegas, in Miami, in Seattle. Most were false leads, but each one had to be investigated. Then came the phone call that changed everything. It was 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. The phone rang, shrill in the darkness. Sharon and I had agreed that I would answer all unknown calls. Just in case. I picked up, my heart already racing. Silence. Then breathing. Then, hello, Mother. My blood turned to ice. Harold. You destroyed everything, he said, his voice different, rougher, older somehow. Everything I worked for. Everything I deserved. You destroyed yourself, I replied, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. Where are you, Harold? He laughed, bitter and sharp. Did you really think I'd tell you? I just wanted you to know I'm still here. Still watching. You took everything from me, but this isn't over. Harold, please. The line went dead. Agent Chen had the call traced within hours. Harold had used a burner phone in Montreal. Canadian authorities were alerted, but once again, Harold vanished before they could close in. But the call told us something important. Harold was angry, desperate, and potentially planning something. Security around our home increased. FBI agents periodically checked in. Sharon learned self-defense. I started carrying pepper spray. We lived in a state of constant vigilance, waiting for the next shoe to drop. But life has to go on, even when you're living in fear. Emma started 3rd grade, excelling despite everything. Tyler found his voice again, literally and figuratively, joining the school choir. Sharon got a job at a local art gallery. And I returned to part-time counseling, specializing in elder abuse victims. My first client was a woman named Grace whose daughter had been slowly poisoning her for inheritance money. The parallels to my own story were eerie, but helping Grace helped me heal too. We survivors have to stick together. The 1-year anniversary of Harold's flight came with a flood of media requests. Everyone wanted to interview the mother who'd outsmarted her serial killer son. I declined most of them, but I did one, a documentary about elder abuse. If my story could save even one person, the exposure was worth it. The documentary aired nationally. Within days, 3 more of Harold's victims were identified. Elderly people in 3 different states who died under suspicious circumstances after befriending a charming young man who matched Harold's description. The victim count was now at 10 confirmed, with possibly more unknown. Each new victim was another knife in my heart. These people had families, friends, lives cut short by my son's greed. I started corresponding with some of the families, offering apologies that felt hollow but necessary. Most were kind, understanding that I was a victim too. But one daughter, whose mother had died just months before Harold came to live with me, said something that haunts me still. "You created him. How do you live with that?" I don't have an answer. I'm not sure I ever will. The second year brought unexpected hope. Emma had started therapy and was making remarkable progress. She'd stopped having nightmares about her father returning. Tyler had found his confidence, even joining the debate team. Sharon had her first art exhibition, paintings that transformed our trauma into something beautiful and powerful. The title of her collection, After the Tea. My health had recovered completely once the poison was out of my system. The fog lifted, my memory sharpened, and I felt 10 years younger. It was a cruel irony. Harold's poison had been killing me, but surviving it had given me a new lease on life. I changed my will again, this time including provisions for Harold's other victims' families. Felt like the right thing to do. The money Harold had killed for would go to healing the wounds he'd created. Emma and Tyler would still receive their trust funds, but the rest would become a fund for elder abuse victims. Then came October 15th, the 2nd anniversary of Harold's flight. I was preparing for our evening tea ritual when the doorbell rang. Sharon and I exchanged glances. We weren't expecting anyone. I checked the security camera and saw a delivery driver with a package. Nothing unusual, except we hadn't ordered anything. Sharon answered the door while I watched from the kitchen. The driver was young, cheerful, requiring a signature. The package was addressed to me, no return address. Sharon brought it inside and we stared at it for a long moment. "Should we call Agent Chen?" Sharon asked. I probably should have said yes, but something made me open it instead. Inside was a single item, a tea tin. The same brand Harold used to use for his special blend. There was a note attached. "For old time's sake. H." The tin was empty except for residue that looked like tea leaves. We called Agent Chen immediately. The FBI took the tin for analysis while increasing our protection. The residue turned out to be harmless tea, but the message was clear. Harold could reach us if he wanted to. The psychological warfare had begun. More packages arrived over the following months. Never anything dangerous, just reminders. A photo of our old family Christmas, Harold's face cut out. Copy of my original will. A newspaper clipping about one of his victims. Each one postmarked from a different city, impossible to trace. "He's trying to break you psychologically," Dr. Rosen explained during one of our sessions. "He can't physically hurt you anymore, so he's trying to maintain control through fear. But here's the thing about surviving attempted murder by your own child. You become stronger than you ever thought possible." Each package Harold sent made me more determined, not more afraid. Sharon felt the same way. We weren't victims anymore. We were survivors, and survivors fight back. I started a blog about our experience. After the Poison became a resource for elder abuse victims and their families. I shared everything. The warning signs I'd missed, the evidence collection, the legal processes, the emotional recovery. The blog went viral, reaching millions of people worldwide. That's when the letters from other victims started arriving. Not Harold's victims, but victims of similar crimes. Children poisoning parents. Caregivers drugging patients. Spouses slowly killing their partners. The problem was epidemic. Hidden in plain sight because we don't want to believe someone we love could hurt us. One letter stood out. It was from a woman in Quebec whose husband had tried to poison her. She'd recognized Harold from the news. He'd been working at the restaurant where she ate regularly, always serving her specifically, always asking about her health. She'd stopped eating there when the news broke, and her mysterious illness had disappeared. Harold was still hunting, even as a fugitive. Agent Chen flew to Quebec immediately, but Harold was already gone. The restaurant owner said he'd quit the day after his picture hit the news. But it confirmed what we suspected. Harold couldn't stop. Killing wasn't just about money anymore. It had become who he was. The investigation revealed Harold had been using increasingly sophisticated methods to avoid capture. Multiple identities, appearance changes, even possible plastic surgery. He'd become a ghost, existing in the shadows of society, preying on the vulnerable while staying one step ahead of law enforcement. Meanwhile, life in our home continued its new normal. Emma, now 10, had become fiercely protective of all of us. She'd appointed herself the family guardian, checking locks, monitoring strangers, making sure we all drank only tea we'd made ourselves. It broke my heart to see a child carrying such weight. Tyler, 8 now, had developed an interest in law enforcement. He wrote letters to Agent Chen asking about the FBI, about catching bad guys, about justice. His favorite TV shows were all crime procedurals. Sharon worried he was obsessed with his father's crimes, but Dr. Rosen said it was his way of processing, turning fear into power by understanding the system that would catch Harold. The third year brought unexpected closure in some ways. Patricia's family reached out. Harold's first wife's parents had read my blog and wanted to meet. They came to Pennsylvania on a cold February day. 2 broken people seeking answers about their daughter's death. "We knew something was wrong," Patricia's mother said, tears streaming down her face. She was so healthy, then suddenly so sick. But Harold was so devoted, so caring. We thanked him for taking such good care of her. We cried together, 3 people bound by Harold's evil. They'd brought photos of Patricia. Vibrant, alive, beautiful. She'd been a teacher, loved by her students. She'd wanted children, but Harold had always said, "Not yet." Now we knew why. Children would have been witnesses, complications in his murder plan. That meeting changed something in me. My guilt transformed into determination. Harold had taken so much from so many. I couldn't bring back his victims, but I could make sure their stories were heard. I started a podcast, The Tea Time Murders. Each episode featured one of Harold's victims, their lives, not just their deaths. Mr. Chan had been a war veteran who'd volunteered at literacy programs. Mrs. Patterson had been an artist whose work now hung in galleries. Patricia had been saving to open a school for underprivileged children. The podcast exploded. Millions of downloads, international coverage. Suddenly, Harold wasn't just a fugitive. He was infamous. His picture was recognized everywhere. The walls were closing in. That's when the game changed. It was Sharon who noticed him first. She was picking up the children from school when she saw a familiar figure across the street. The walk was different, the hair was different, but she knew. Mothers always know. She called me immediately, her voice shaking. "He's here. Harold's in town." By the time Agent Chen arrived, he was gone. But the security cameras from nearby businesses confirmed it. Harold had been watching the school, watching his children. The predator had returned to his hunting grounds. The FBI set up surveillance everywhere. Our house became a fortress. The children were pulled from school, taught at home by a certified teacher who was also a former police officer. We lived in lockdown, waiting for Harold to make his move. But Harold was too smart for a direct approach. Instead, he began a campaign of psychological terrorism. Sharon would glimpse him at the grocery store, only for him to vanish when she looked again. I'd see a familiar figure in our yard at night, but the cameras would show nothing. He was there but not there, haunting us like a malevolent ghost. He wants you to break, Agent Chen explained. He wants you to make a mistake, to let your guard down. Don't give him that satisfaction. Then came the night that changed everything. Again. It was another October 15th, the 3rd anniversary. We were having our evening tea, all of us together, Sharon, the children, and me. It had become our tradition, our way of reclaiming the ritual Harold had perverted. We were laughing at something Tyler had said when the lights went out. In the darkness, we heard the back door open. A step. Slow, deliberate, familiar. "Hello, family." Harold's voice came from the darkness. "Did you miss me?" Sharon grabbed the children, pulling them behind the sofa. I reached for my phone, but Harold was faster. The phone flew from my hand. "No need for that, Mother," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I just wanted to see my children one last time." "You have no children here," Sharon said fiercely. "You lost that right when you became a monster." Harold laughed. "Monster. I'm a survivor just like you claim to be. Everything I did was for them, for their future." "You did it for yourself," I said, finding my voice. "For your greed, your debts, your ego." The lights suddenly came back on. Harold stood in our kitchen, but he was barely recognizable. Thin, gaunt, aged 20 years and 3. The fugitive life had not been kind to him. "Look at me," he said to Emma and Tyler. "Look at what they've done to your father." But Emma, brave Emma, stepped forward. "You're not our father. Fathers don't poison grandmothers. Fathers don't run away like cowards." The words hit Harold harder than any physical blow could have. His face crumbled, then hardened into something truly frightening. "I should have started with you," he snarled, stepping toward the children. That's when I acted. The pot of boiling tea I'd been preparing flew from my hands, hitting Harold square in the face. He screamed, stumbling backward, and Sharon struck him with the fireplace poker she'd grabbed. He went down hard. By the time he struggled to his feet, Agent Chen and her team had stormed in. They'd been watching, waiting for him to incriminate himself. Harold had walked into a trap of his own making. As they cuffed him, Harold looked at me one last time. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is," I replied. "It's finally over." The trial was a media circus. Harold, the tea time killer, faced charges for 12 murders across 6 states. The prosecution had my recordings, the tea samples, witness testimonies, and Harold's own confession made that night in our kitchen. His defense tried to claim mental illness, diminished capacity, even blamed me for being an absent mother. None of it stuck. During his sentencing, Harold was given the chance to speak. He stood, looked directly at me and said, "I'm not sorry. My only regret is failing." The judge sentenced him to life without parole, consecutive sentences that ensured he'd die in prison even if he lived to be 200. As they led him away, Harold didn't look back. The son I'd raised was gone, replaced entirely by the monster he'd always been. That was 6 months ago. Life now is different, calmer but never quite peaceful. We still have our evening tea, but the ritual has evolved. Friends join us sometimes. Other survivors. FBI agents who became family. The house that nearly became my tomb is now a sanctuary for those rebuilding after trauma. Emma, now 11, wants to be a prosecutor. She says she wants to make sure people like her father never hurt anyone again. Tyler, 9, has decided to become a doctor, a healer to counteract the poisoner in his bloodline. They visit Harold's victims' graves with me, leaving flowers and apologies their father will never offer. Sharon's art has become her voice. Her latest exhibition, Breaking the Cycle, sold out in 3 days. She's dating now. A kind man who knows our story and loves her anyway. Watching her heal gives me hope that the poison Harold spread doesn't have to define our future. My inheritance, the money Harold killed for, has funded a foundation for elder abuse prevention. We've helped hundreds of families recognize the signs, escape dangerous situations, find justice. Every person saved feels like a small victory against Harold's legacy of death. I still counsel victims, but now I do it with the authority of survival. When I tell them it gets better, they believe me because I'm living proof. When I say justice is possible, they see Harold's mugshot on my desk, the serial killer son now behind bars forever. The dark family secret is public now, our shame transformed into purpose. Yes, I raised a monster. But I also stopped him. And in stopping him I saved lives, including my own. People often ask if I still love Harold. It's the hardest question to answer. I love the baby I held, the child who brought me Mother's Day cards, the young man I was proud of at graduation. But that person never really existed. He was a mask Harold wore, a character he played. The real Harold, the one serving life in prison, I don't love him. Can't. He's not my son. He's the man who tried to murder me for money. This shocking revelation taught me that family isn't just blood. Family is Sharon, who risked everything to save me. Family is Emma and Tyler, innocent souls who chose love over their father's darkness. Family is Agent Chen, who still calls to check on us. Family is the survivors who share their stories with me, finding strength in our shared trauma. The poison tea that was meant to kill me ultimately saved me, not from death, but from the illusion that love means accepting abuse. Harold's betrayal freed me to see clearly. When someone shows you who they are, believe them, even if they're your son, especially if they're your son. Silence became my greatest weapon during those years of pretend decline. But now my voice is my power. Every story I tell, every victim I help, every speech I give chips away at the silence that allows elder abuse to flourish in shadows. Harold thought he was brewing my doom in those china cups. Instead, he was brewing his own capture, one poisoned sip at a time. The greedy son who counted his inheritance before I was dead now counts days in a cell he'll never leave. Sometimes late at night, I stand at my bedroom window. The same window where I used to watch Harold's car leave for his job interviews, that were really hunting expeditions. The view is the same, but everything else has changed. The woman looking out is stronger, wiser, surrounded by real love instead of performed affection. My heart pounded like a drum in the quiet kitchen the night Harold returned, but it pounds differently now. With life, with purpose, with the knowledge that I survived something unsurvivable. I looked my would-be killer in the eye and won. The truth spilled out, as dark as the tea he brewed. But truth has a way of cleansing poison from our lives. Harold's truth set us free. Free from fear, free from manipulation, free from the toxic love that nearly killed me. Every word felt like a knife in my chest when I testified against my son, but those words built a cage he'll never escape. My testimony, combined with the evidence I'd gathered, ensured Harold would never poison another cup of tea, never steal another life, never pretend to love while planning murder. He never saw the storm I was about to unleash because he never really saw me at all. To Harold, I wasn't his mother. I was a walking bank account, an obstacle to wealth, a problem to be solved with poison. But mothers are more than their worth in dollars. We're fighters, protectors, survivors. And this mother refused to go quietly into that poison night. The air grew heavy with secrets during those 3 years, but now our air is clear. We breathe freely, laugh freely, live freely. The house that held so much darkness is bright with children's laughter, with Sharon's paintings, with the voices of survivors finding their strength over evening tea. A chill ran through my veins when I first realized Harold was poisoning me, but that chill became steel, became determination, became the force that brought him down. Sometimes the coldest truths forge the strongest souls. Her hands trembled on the teacup. Sharon's hands, my hands, the hands of every victim who's ever been served poison disguised as love. But trembling hands can still fight back. They can gather evidence, make phone calls, throw boiling tea in the face of evil. Our hands trembled, but they didn't fail. His voice dripped with honey, but I could taste the poison beneath from the very beginning. I just didn't want to believe it. Now I know. When honey tastes like poison, it is poison, no matter who serves it with a smile. Cold silence filled the room the night Harold was arrested, but it wasn't the silence of fear anymore. It was the silence of ending, of justice, of a story finally finding its conclusion. Harold's story ended in handcuffs. Ours began with freedom. This true story of family betrayal has reached millions through my blog, podcast, and speaking engagements. But it's not really about Harold anymore. It's about the rest of us. The survivors, the fighters, the ones who refuse to drink the poison no matter how sweetly it's offered. The deadly secret Harold kept for years is no more secret. The whole world knows what he did, who he is, what he's capable of. His infamy is his prison even more than the bars that hold him. He wanted to be rich, powerful, free. Instead, he's prisoner number 78432, serving life without parole, known forever as the son who poisoned his mother for money. This inheritance battle ended with the inheritance going exactly where it should, to innocent children who will use it to build lives their father tried to destroy. The money Harold killed for now funds their therapy, their education, their dreams. It's the ultimate irony, the perfect justice. This family drama became a cautionary tale, but also a story of hope. We survived. We thrived. We turned poison into purpose, betrayal into belonging, attempted murder into a mission to save others. The shocking confession Harold made that night, "I'm not sorry," freed us completely. We don't have to wonder if he regrets it, if he might change, if he deserves forgiveness. He told us exactly who he is, and we believe him. This mother and son betrayal story doesn't have a happy ending, but it has just one. The son is in prison. The mother is alive. The grandchildren are safe. The victims have been heard. Justice, imperfect as it may be, was served. So to everyone watching, remember this. You are not obligated to drink poison just because it's served by family. You have the right to refuse, to fight back, to survive. Trust your instincts. Gather evidence. Seek help. Don't let family bonds become chains that hold you while someone slowly takes your life. And to Harold, if you're somehow watching this from prison, you failed. Your mother survived. Your children thrive. Your victims are remembered. Your legacy is not wealth but warning, a cautionary tale told to prevent others from following your poisonous path. The tea that revealed everything ultimately revealed this. Love isn't measured in inheritance or blood or even time spent together. Love is measured in truth, in protection, in the choice to save rather than destroy. Harold chose destruction. We chose salvation. And in the end, salvation is always stronger than poison. What would you have done if you discovered a family member was slowly poisoning you? Would you have gathered evidence like I did, or confronted them immediately? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story has helped you recognize warning signs in your own life, or if you think it could help someone you know, please subscribe and share. Together, we can ensure that no more grandmothers die from poisoned tea. No more families are destroyed by greed, and no more Harolds succeed in their deadly plans. Remember, silence might become your greatest weapon, but your voice is your greatest power. Use it. Your life might depend on it.